right, I'm currently on the phone with Toon. He's another musician that reached out about the current interview session. So I'm going to go ahead and give him the chance to introduce himself.
Hey, what up? My name's Toon. I'm a local recording hip hop artist here in the Twin Cities. I've been making music now for the last 2 years, at least officially. Before that, I have some unofficial projects that I've been making going back as far as 2016.
Awesome, sounds good. Well, let's get into a bit of how this all started. Tell me about when you first began to connect with music. What about it kind of spoke to you and made you want to participate in it?
Yeah, I've always been, someone that loves music, someone that really resonates with music ever since I was a little kid. Honestly, I just remember, music was my therapy. Music was how I connected with my parents. Music was an important part of my life for as long as I can remember. I associate, periods of my life with specific songs and things like that. But I probably say I really got drawn to music when I was in middle school. I wrote my first like song, if you want to call it, like in my notebook in seventh grade, and it was dumb. It was cheesy. It was probably terrible, but I never let like that growth process stop me. And then when I was in high school, my friends they would all freestyle rap together, and that's kind of what got me into hip hop music. That's what got me into rapping. Were those circles, were those cipher sessions I had with my friends back in high school. One of my friends was, he was a senior and I was a sophomore, and he took me to all the senior parties and shit. And, we'd freestyle there, and everybody was like, yeah, hop in. We don't care if you mess up. And that really got me to come out of my shell a little bit. I was kind of a quiet kid coming into a new school a lot of the time. Uh, Things like that, like it became like a social aspect. I'd always freestyle with all my friends. And then, eventually in 2015, I wrote and recorded my first handful of songs at, in my room with a, crappy USB mic and, the cheapest software I could get at the time on a computer that I bought from the pawn shop for $200. It just all I had until that's really where I started with it. Really at ground zero, from writing to learning how to rap to learning how to record, and really going from there. I've been making music ever since.
Okay, well let's kind of take a magnifying glass to that period of time when you first started writing, when you wrote your first song that you looked back on and kind of, felt a way about. Tell me what the motivation was to begin at that point. What kind of made you go over the edge to say, I'm going to do this, we're going to begin this process?
Uh, I mean, I guess I was just trying to emulate what I found dope at the time. And at the time, I was really into this song by D12, the rap group that Eminem was a part of. They have this song called Purple Pills. Maybe you've heard it, maybe you haven't. But I thought that song was so like funny and cool when I was in middle school. I tried to like replicate the the feeling I got from that song, where it was like over the top about drugs and stupid shit like that. And, so I guess just like the fun that the kind of like silly goofiness that I had back in middle school.
Okay. So, how did that kind of progress? Now that you have kind of gotten to the point where you went through all of those beginning phases of figuring out how to make a beat and then putting vocals to it, how did you kind of envision where you wanted to go with it? Obviously, I understand the direction to want to continue to kind of create in that vein of content. But what was kind of your, guiding light of the type of stuff that you wanted to make?
Personal experiences and influences really. As I grew older, my music taste obviously expanded quite a bit, and with that also came, just me growing up as a person, and for a lot of that time. I spent struggling with mental health and, you know, drug problems as a teenager, as a young adult. Um, and those experiences drove me into like more experimental music that I'd never really ventured into before. More like poetic underground hip hop music. Guys that used to be in this city, like Christoph Crane, Sadistic is another one. You know, Idea, rest in peace. You know, this kind of like this wave of, some people call it prog rap, but this wave of like artistic, poetic hip hop that came in, you know, in the late 2000s and early 2010s. And I was kind of growing up with that music and discovering that music at the time. And that made me really want to start writing music that was about what I was going through, or about what I felt, or about how how I viewed certain things. And you know, my music became a lot more personal. And when I recorded my first project, it was this mixtape I released on SoundCloud. It was back when I called myself King T back then. Um, but when I wrote and recorded that first project, a lot of those songs like have a little bit more of like a personal touch to them, and I'm talking about where I've come from doing drugs to the point where I was, you know, sober at that point. And so, you know, just kind of, you know, the music that the music that I listen to always is reflective of like my personal state, and my personal state is always reflected in what I write, and both like, you know, like directly and indirectly from the kind of music I'm listening to as a result of what's going on in my personal life.
Sure. So you mentioned that your initial handful of songs was created via software. I imagine using like VST instruments and things like that. Tell me about how that progress has come along. Are you still working with mostly virtual instruments, or are you working with other musicians to create your beats? Tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, I work with you know, different producers that make my beats. You know, just people I've met online, people I've met through music. Obviously, you know, we're not in the free garage band instruments wave anymore. That's where a lot of that stuff kind of got started. I did my first recordings on Audacity. Um, Off of YouTube beats that I had gotten for free through some, you know, third party website. I went to like their BeatStars and scrolled around and did stuff like that. Um, so it's definitely been a bit of a glow up in that regards. And just been able to curate the instrumentals that I write to and rap over a lot more, and I'm able to get more of a refined sound and a more like intentionality to my music, which has been great because it was a struggle for years, and it was like the biggest obstacle I faced when I first started making music. Is I didn't know anything about music theory. I didn't know how to play any instruments. I only knew how to write music, you know, write lyrics. Um, so just yeah, came a long way in that regard.
Sure. Awesome. So tell me about where that has brought you to. What are you doing now? Obviously, you're still working on it. You're working with other producers and stuff, but are you putting together like a new album, or what is kind of on your agenda right now?
Yeah. So, I mean, on my agenda right now, I am working on another album um, by the name of In Waves. Looking to release sometime in 2025. Don't have like you know, when it's ready, it'll be ready. But I definitely want to shoot for sometime next year. And I'm coming off of, you know, back to back years. I've dropped EPs, you know, smaller projects. Toon World was the first one I kind of released under my new name. Um, Very anime, you know, influenced, lots of like 808 heavy stuff. Um, And then I dropped a song called, or not a song, a project called uh, The Art of War, which was this year in 2024. And this was a lot more East Coast boom bap influenced, a lot of Wu Tang influence, a lot of focus on lyricism and rhyme schemes and punchlines and double entendres and imagery. Uh, just really kind of wanted to put out a project that I would have loved, which is, that East Coast sound, that kind of, the uh, hard hitting kick drums and the older sample style. I really loved that sound, and I really loved the way that artists on the East Coast would incorporate different blurbs, whether it be like from old like ninja movies, old samurai movies, or like MF Doom, where he'd bring in uh, samples from like comic book movies and old cartoons and stuff like that. I always just loved that aesthetic. It was so raw to me. It was so, those are my favorite kind of beats to rap over for sure.
Okay, excellent. And then going forward, you're expecting another EP this year, and then to continue on that cadence. Are you doing like live shows or anything?
Yeah, I'm doing live shows. I actually performed at Uptown Porch Fest this summer. I was fortunate enough to get invited to that and go and perform, and that was a huge event. That'd probably be kind of and my, that EP I dropped along with the Porch Fest show. Both really huge moments for me. That show was fantastic. All the people I met there. Shout out Perf, one of the other artists that I went there and performed with. I also wanted to shout out Chris, who volunteered his porch for us. He was a super cool guy. And to everybody that made that show, made that show possible. Ton of other artists. You might even interview someone that was at that show and performed, because there was a ton of artists spanning all genres. The experience was super dope. Everyone was super inclusive and super inclusive and super friendly and positive, and people did a lot for the artists that day, which is super great for the Minnesota music scene. I think more local run festivals should be out here in Minnesota, because I think people here really connect with different kinds of music. There is a strong, vibrant music scene here, and events like that exemplify them. Other than that, I've been doing a ton of local shows, a lot of artist showcases, things of that nature. Done a couple of shows with DJ Cam Jones, did a couple of shows with another promoter, and I did the house party for my good friend King Alpha. I know he's got some more of those cooking up, so we're gonna keep going to shows. Hopefully, I get to go back to Porch Fest in 2025. Uh, I've got that album coming out in waves in 2025. A lot of cool, content, videos. It's a real big concept album. Going to pull from a lot of different influences. And I hope that anybody listening now, and I hope that you get to see and listen to some of the art I put out there accompanying the music itself.
Sure, absolutely. So on that note, where can people find you and check you out?
So people can find me mainly on Instagram at It's Tune, all one word. And then on Facebook, they can find me at Tune World. That's my official Facebook page. I post all my content through Meta at those two places. I can also be found on TikTok at It's Tune as well. Only places I'm not on are like Twitter, Blue Sky, things like that.
Perfect. So I always like to give the person I'm interviewing the opportunity to put out their last word. So what's a message that you have that you want other people to hear?
Keep making art, man. No matter what it is you do, whether you're a songwriter, a musician, painter, sculptor, glass blower, anything, physical art, 2D art, 3D art, whatever you do out there, keep making it. The world can never have too much art.